Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Enneagram Enthusiast podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Sierra.
I'm Ryan, and we want to welcome you to our podcast here today. We're going to go over key motivations, those deep down core motivations of life that really speak to a lot of if you're trying to find out your number, I think it's one of the best tools to use in identifying who you really are.
Yeah, that along with the stress and the security are, I think, the key elements.
Yeah, that
of
we've found
understanding-
so far in
Yeah, just
teaching
so
people and working through some stuff, which we'll get into today. Before we do that, appreciate if you guys take a moment and rate this, throw us a comment out there. And we want to get into questions and answers with you guys as well. Where can they email us at?
Yeah, so we've been so excited to your responses to our podcast so far and our social media. We love doing these. So go ahead and either shoot us a question, give us some feedback, question, comment, concern at enneagramenthusiast@gmail.com.
That's great. And you can follow us on social media as well, Enneagram Enthusiast,
Just across the board.
The board right there.
Almost Shanks.
Almost, but not quite. Doesn't count. You can't take any more points from me today on that. So, covering the overview of the key motivations today, obviously 9 types, 9 different key motivations that go along with those. And we were recently teaching at a church about the Enneagram, kind of Enneagram 101, the basics, going through the 9 different types.
Yeah.
The key motivations, like you just mentioned, stresses and security, wings, that sort of thing. Really basic overview, but when somebody knows nothing about the Enneagram, you got to go with the basics first. And we had a great time with those people at the church there. And
yeah, we played a game.
We played a game with the key motivations. And what's cool is as we're going through the 9 types, really just doing an overview of each one, strengths, challenges, basic fears, basic motivations, why we act the way we act. Throw in some fun there with, different people that match those different types. So you can go, oh, that person's a 3. That makes sense. Okay, now I can kind of picture in my mind what that looks like. We get into the spot on key motivations, and it kind of opened up people's minds.
A whole can of worms.
Yes.
It was really entertaining because you could see everybody's faces change drastically. Like there are a few people specifically that we've discussed that I will refrain from mentioning here, but I'm sure y'all know who you are if you're listening to this. Kind of blew your mind a little bit. And it was really cool because coming from an educational perspective, I love it when I see that look on people's faces when they're like, oh my gosh. But at this point, it's not really about learning something. It's literally learning themselves.
It is.
And
yeah.
something that I've heard so frequently just in educational circumstances lately is, wow, it's like I know this about myself, but having this on a piece of paper and having like it's so well articulated is a huge deal.
Yes, very much. And we did a game like you mentioned with it, and we wanted to do the game there to kind of obviously go through the key motivations and what they're all about, but also to see how well everybody was paying attention when going through the 9 overviews.
You are such a 3.
Yes.
In a good way.
I thrive in this part. And what was ultra fascinating, we had fun with it. We did guys against girls.
Obviously.
So to see who was paying attention the best.
Girls
And,
won.
Oh, not only did
Girls
the girls
won.
win,
100%.
they got a 100% on everything.
You remember
they
what
met.
the guys got?
They got like 3 right.
Uh-huh.
Something like that. It was quite embarrassing, man.
The lack of 3s in the room.
You know what? I think it was? I think it was men in the room were becoming so self-aware that it just blew their mind and they couldn't pay attention.
Well, I feel like a certain person already knew who was like what was going on because he was the one who was like putting together all the answers in the back. Again, not saying any names, but it was kind of interesting.
But, it
was cool.
It was a fun part of the game. And like I said, the girls got them all right, which I figured either team would have probably got maybe 6 or 7 right. So that was great because it shows
that women always get 100%.
We'll leave it at that. And so, but going into what the key motivations were all about in that part of the teaching right there, and like you said, I noticed like it was not like jawed, but the eyes got bigger.
Yeah,
the eyes got bigger. You could see the light bulb like going off in the head is what it was.
Yeah,
and at that point, you could see like we had a lot of couples in there, and you can see one turning to the other, and they start jabbering and talking.
Yeah, it was super fun.
You see it come to life because there's realization in that moment.
Yeah.
And so what we wanted to do for you guys is go through just a very brief overview of the motivations, the key motivations for each type.
Yeah.
Because if you're out there listening and you're trying to decipher what type I am, like we said, this is one of the key deciding factors.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it solidified me trying to figure out what number I was actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was really cool with that. So
Yeah.
before we get into that, I feel like you're itching to say something because every time you get ready to say something, I interrupt you. So
And you just keep talking.
yes.
That's good. I'm fine. We're good. Oh, yeah. So we had mentioned before that I had mistyped Ryan.
Yeah, you were thinking I was a 1.
For sure. And that was when we were first barely scratching the surface of the Enneagram. And so key motivations
Yeah, those key motivations.
really, I think, played a factor in you and your self-realization, realizing that you were actually not a 1, like you felt like you were on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
You were 3.
Definitely
Kind of like
3.
opened up the world for you a little bit.
And I like how you said that there of a surface because you can look at certain traits of people and you can automatically just assume by how they act on the surface that, hey, that's this number. But it really comes down to the person inside. And that person who's trying to figure it out is really the only person who really knows what that is. And so as much as you can try to help they're the one that has to decide what that key motivation is for them and their heart behind everything. It's not the what that you're doing. It's more of the why.
Right.
Behind
the
it.
why behind it.
The why behind it. So
cool.
Let's run through these real quick. Let's go through them.
This is not a real quick thing.
It's not.
We had such a short time.
But for the sake of a podcast,
we'll keep it short.
And attention spans.
Okay, ready, set,
go.
Okay, 1s. We're gonna go through each type in the key motivation. We'll talk about our relation to it and then others we know and how the key motivation works and things like that. So for type 1, the reformer, not the perfectionist, the reformer, the key motivation for this type is wants to be right, to strive higher and improve everything, to be consistent with their ideals, to justify themselves, to be beyond criticism so as not to be condemned by anyone. So we kind of already talked about how you thought you were, or I thought you were a 1.
Mm-hmm.
But what were your thoughts when you read that key motivation when we were first getting into this?
Yeah, I mean, some of it hit, but it was like more of a surface level, like you're talking about, like the whole strive higher, improve everything. I'm about that. I'm 100% about that. I'll walk into a room and I'll know within half a second how everything can work better. It's just my brain, how it works. But the whole thing to be consistent with their ideals didn't match up too well for me. I'd rather win than...
And cheat, like in basketball.
No, not cheat.
I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Don't go down that road now. Come on now. But, you know, a little help. I'd rather get it done than have to get it done like absolutely perfect.
Right.
And so I'd rather win than like try to figure out the best way to win. Just let me cross the finish line first. That's all I care about. So that didn't sit well with me. Not well, but it didn't sit with me like as far as like, wow, that's a key motivation there. And so to be beyond criticism as to not be condemned by anyone, that hit a little bit home. But, you know, again...
1s are like those people that walk into a room and see everything out of place.
Yes.
And I feel like you're that person who walks into a room and is like, I can make this faster and better.
Mm-hmm. More efficient.
Yeah.
It's getting into my security as a 3 into the 6, the troubleshooter mode.
Oh, that's right. So
there you go. But 1s deal with criticism both internally and externally as a key motivation.
Right.
And so if you're thinking about yourself as a 1, criticism both towards yourself and towards others and towards things is going to be huge as a key motivation for you. So that sums up a 1 pretty much there. But type 2, the helper, the key motivation. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. They want to be loved, to express their feelings for others, to be needed and appreciated, to get others to respond to them. That's a huge one right there. I think so far that's the top one there.
That's the top one for the 2s in my life.
Yeah, and to vindicate their claims about themselves. So you know a couple 2s in your life.
I know a few 2s.
Yeah.
2s. It's so funny because I love 2s. It's not funny, actually. I really, really love 2s. And it's really interesting having 2 female friends, and I have 1 male friend who is a 2. But for, we've talked about this before, I believe. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but it's actually highly fascinating to me how scientifically there's something in a female's brain that switches to the 2 when they're in that nurturing mode. And I'm not sure if that's like something that is an adaptation or where that goes, but it's very interesting. So 2s, they're the people who are like the comforter, and that's like their key. I think one of their key motivation is they have to have not necessarily a validation, but a big thing for the 2 is to be needed and appreciated. And obviously that's where like the whole sin thing of pride comes into play, if you want to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, because you have a really good friend
Right.
who was telling you about pride in her life and how 2s, when they walk into a room, correct me if I'm wrong, they're prideful because they just think that nothing can get done without them.
Nothing really, let's be real, like 2s are the ones that make it happen, but that is where the pride comes in. Nothing can be done. Nothing can be completed without them. They're the helper. They're the ones who make things go.
So when it says...
even if it's just being there for people.
Yeah, so when it says they want to be loved and express their feelings for others in the 2s in your life, how does that play out in like a practical way?
Well, my mom is a very strong 2, as far as we know. But she will go so far as trying to put the shoes on my feet when I'm trying to walk out the door. And sometimes it's easier for people to do it themselves. And that is a massive insult to the 2. Like when I'm like, Mom, I can put my shoes on myself. Let me get out the door. I don't need you to help with like, trying to put my stuff in the car or anything. It's already done. She does take that as a personal insult because that's who she is. She needs to be needed. And that's a wonderful thing about 2s, but it's also, that's their key motivation.
There you go. So moving on to type 3s, the achiever. I'm going to take this one if you don't mind.
Go for it. I just wanted to sing your theme song.
Oh, go for it.
You know the song I Always Win?
Yeah, you want to sing it?
No.
Please do.
No. But that's the theme song for the 3.
That's a very good one. Future post coming up.
You got it.
We actually are doing one like that coming up as far as music. So type 3 is the key motivation. Here it is. Want to be affirmed, to distinguish themselves from others, to have attention, to be admired, and to impress others. Okay, so every single one of those statements is me to a core.
That's how you knew you were 3.
That's how I knew. And it was like, I saw that, I read that. It's one of those things, and this is where I will tell anybody that we're training or coaching in this. It's just one of those things that you know when you know, because it hits you. It really does. It's like you have your identical twin just popped out of the page, so to speak, on that. So 3s being affirmed, always want to be affirmed. If you have a 3 in your life, tell them what? Tell them good job.
Good job.
Good job. Yeah. Being affirmed verbally is great. They want to distinguish themselves from others, whether that's the way you act, the way you dress, the way you think, as long as you're just distinguishing yourself as better. Yes, to have attention. We are attention hogs, believe it or not.
There was a question on our Instagram the other day that was like, why do 3s get nothing for being drama queens and 4s get the drama queens? And I laughed. I was like, I think Ryan's more of a drama queen than the 4s that I know.
That's because I have 3 and 4.
I know. You get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Double dose there.
Good job.
So, and also what I want everybody to recognize too in this is when we're talking about these key motivations, think on levels of unhealthy, average, and healthy.
Oh, true.
Because when you say 3s love to have attention, a very unhealthy 3 will be trying to draw attention, major. Whereas a more healthy 3 necessarily won't as much want the attention.
Right.
So then they also want to be admired. Who doesn't want to be admired, though? Come on. Maybe that's just a 3 talking. And to
I think like several numbers don't care.
Okay, so it doesn't compute in my mind otherwise. And to impress others is a huge thing. And the whole thing with impressing others goes back to the validation of receiving love as a 3. So yeah. So what do you think about a 4?
So moving into 4, the type 4, the individualist, The key motivation for this type is wants to express themselves and their individuality, to bring and surround themselves with beauty, to maintain certain moods and feelings, to withdraw, to protect their self-image, to take care of emotional needs before attending to anything else, and to attract a rescuer.
That's a lot.
That's a ton of key motivation for the 4, but I think that almost works with the whole they always feel like they don't necessarily fit in, and so they identify with a lot. And this is just me. I don't think it's like a fact or anything, but in my opinion, part of the reason why there are so many key motivations for a 4 is because they don't necessarily know where they fit in, and so they have multiple motivations that kind of fit into their individuality and their type, but they also fit into multiple different circumstances and situations.
That's true. I'm a wing 4. That's why we said a double dose of 3 and 4.
Yep.
And so a lot of these I can relate to a lot of these. Stuff like create and surround myself with beauty, not necessarily like in this whole beauty sense, but I like things put together. I like them looking
Your
neat.
office, we're in your office right now, and it looks fantastic.
Yes,
Great
I think
job.
4s and 5s would appreciate it, because I was told that it's minimalistic, and that's a 5 trait quite a bit. But to maintain certain moods and feelings, I can see that as a wing 4, and I can see who would be a type 4. That is such a huge thing, because feelings and moods are a real big driving force behind a motivation for a 4.
Absolutely.
They'll flow with it.
That's part of the reason why I thought I was a 4 at first, was because this key motivation, about 80 to 90% actually is very true. So
yeah. And then getting into, once again, the unhealthy to healthy approach.
Right.
They tend to take care of their emotional needs before attending to anything else. Beginning to move out of that into a more healthy state, you begin to recognize the other things that are important as well, not just how you're feeling. So
definitely,
there's a lot to go along with the 4, but that's just kind of the basic overview for that. So type 5.
Let's talk about the 5.
Fives are cool. The more I'm getting to know about 5s, I love 5s. 5s, the key motivation is this: to possess knowledge, to understand the environment, to have everything figured out as a way of defending the self from threats from the environment. And so 5s, a big deal is environment. A big deal is environment for them.
They feed off of environment as much as they, because they're observers, they're investigators, they take in their surroundings. But I think a big thing for the 5 is actually realizing that they are not their environment. They're simply taking it in.
Yeah. And so the whole thing about possessing knowledge is a huge thing. Obviously, they're called the investigators. But when it says possess knowledge, the even more underlying factor for that is the sense that if they have knowledge, then they have the power.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. But they have something that maybe somebody else doesn't have. And I was telling somebody yesterday about the 5 and explaining that as we were doing some coaching with somebody. And I let them know, I said 5s will often get the knowledge because they're the investigator, but they will hoard the knowledge.
Yeah, they won't really share it with anybody because that's giving away their defense.
Exactly. So that's an underlying of the key motivation there, not just to possess knowledge, but the why behind possessing the knowledge there. So 5s, I love 5s because I wish I had more 5s on my teams. They're amazing people. So.
Well, it's funny because I love Agatha Christie, but I realized, because I go through books and I love typing people's key motivations in their books or in their characters, as far as I can anyways. And I find it interesting near the end, they always say, the villain he always makes one mistake. And I think it's fascinating to me how I think in Agatha Christie's books anyways, the villain seems like he is always a 5 because he retains all of his knowledge, he takes in all of his observation, but then there is one point in time where he says too much.
Oh.
And that's where the 5 defense mechanism comes down. And obviously that's the one thing that someone catches where it's like, oh, obviously, like if I would have caught that on. But I have a good friend who reads a lot of mystery novels, and she, growing up anyways, and she was always able to figure them out because being a 5, she always could tell exactly when someone let something slip. So it's pretty interesting.
Interesting there. Okay. 6s though.
Okay, so type 6.
Type 6 is the loyalist. Yep.
Yeah. So the key motivation for that type is they want to have security. They want to feel supported by others, to have a certitude and reassurance, to test the attitudes of others towards them, to fight against anxiety and insecurity. I feel like you've been really enjoying learning about 6 recently.
I do,
because that's your
because
security.
that's my security number on that. And obviously, knowing that, I want to dive more into that for myself. But what I'm realizing more as I get to know sixes as well, and just interacting with them in life, the whole thing here of to test the attitudes of others towards them.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge because for a 6, they want the security, and they want to feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
but they are a little fearful of diving into that, so to speak. And so they will test it out to see, oh, is this safe? And once they cross that line, there's this total trust and this commitment. That's why they're called the
Right.
loyalists, because they're in this now
They are so
safe
committed.
zone.
They are committed troubleshooters.
Yes, but they seem a little standoffish at first, and then they morph into the most committed, loyal person ever because they've crossed that boundary of safety.
Right.
And then to fight against anxiety and insecurity, obviously as a 6, more than any other number, being insecure, having fear and anxiety, driving a lot of what you think and feel and do in life. This goes back to wanting that safety and security.
Right.
In your mind and in your heart and towards other people and things.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if you think about the Friends podcast that we did a while ago, or if you haven't even listened to it, but you know the character of Chandler, I think he's honestly not even necessarily an extreme 6. I think he's just a very average 6.
Average 6, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a good example to give. If you know the
Yeah.
character really well, you can go, oh, wait a second. Okay.
That's Chandler.
So,
To a T.
and again, if you watch TV and you've ever seen The Office, Michael Scott is the epitome of a type 7, which we're diving into right now. And type 7s, the enthusiast. They're the fun ones. They're the energetic ones.
I love 7s.
Yes.
I feel like it's a stereotypical thing to say, but like,
They're energetic and all that stuff. And I know a
Yeah,
lot of
they're
7s don't like
fun.
to be called that because it is like a stereotype. But anyway, here's the key motivations for a 7. They want to maintain their freedom and happiness. They want to avoid missing out on a worthwhile experience, to keep themselves excited and occupied, and to avoid and discharge pain.
right.
And so knowing some 7s in our life, this is very true, like straight up down the line, very, very true here. They want to express this freedom and happiness and maintain it. Whatever's in front of them, they're happy to go do, and on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And it's like they're energetic. Yes, I actually envy a little bit of 7s because they just seem like they're so full of life and energetic all the time. And I'm like, I wish I could have that, you know? But it comes down to this. The ultimate key motivation for that 7 and the underlying factor of why they do a lot of those things is because they want to avoid the pain. Avoid
Right.
the pain at all costs almost.
Right. Right. So there's a couple of 7s in my life. One of my favorite 7s in the world is a teacher, and she literally fills her life up with so much stuff. I'm like, how are you not tired? But she is. She just cannot slow down to like actually
Feel it.
feel it.
Notice
She will
it.
not. Yeah, she'll refuse. Then the other 7 I knew growing up, and he was into everything. He was into like shark diving and cliff jumping and all of the crazy things that like I might one day do, like, you know, every 5 years. But he like started packing it all in like a couple of years. And I didn't find out until later that his parents are going through a really bad custody battle and divorce and things going on, and he just never wanted to stop and talk about it. So that is, I think, the epitome of a 7 is, yes, they want to maintain their freedom and happiness. Yes, they want to avoid missing out on worthwhile experiences, but that is because they must keep the pain away. So,
Yeah. 7s are amazing though. I love 7s. They're so much fun.
I love 7s.
And as I more understand 8s, and getting to know more 8s in my life, I love 8s. Mostly because I appreciate just straight up, like, this is who they are. This is what you get.
Right.
And I love that. I don't like figuring it out. Just black and white. Just tell me. Like, I don't care. I can take it. So I appreciate that about them. But for a type 8 who's a challenger, the key motivation is this. They want to be self-reliant. They want to prove their strength, and they want to resist weakness. They want to be important in the world, to dominate the environment, and to stay in control of the situation. There's a lot of control here, as you can see. Like, I think key motivation boils down to one word for an 8. It's control.
Well, they're called the challenger. I thought it was so interesting how even in that church teaching the other night, I think a lot of the men, like looking on the surface and looking at the key motivation, they were like, "Oh, I want to be the challenger."
Yes, it's kind of an innate thing for men
to want to be that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm really glad they're not all 8s.
Yeah, we don't need all 8s. Please, no.
No, I think I would die in a corner somewhere. But I'm a wing 8. I love being a wing 8, honestly. So I want to just say how the 8 really works with my sense of justice, I think. I
Very
love
much so.
how I don't need to worry about being too unconfrontational as a 9, because in my wing 8, when that wants to come out, heck yeah, I can be stubborn, I can be belligerent, not something I'm very proud about, but it also keeps me from withering in a corner somewhere because I don't feel like I can talk. So, but the dominate the environment, not necessarily something, but I notice that it comes out more when I want to dominate the environment, when I actually get into my 3 mode.
Okay.
So that's pretty interesting. But anyways.
In your security there.
Yeah.
So the whole prove their strength and resist weakness thing can probably get tiring for an 8 as well. Constantly having to keep all this stuff bottled up and this image and all of that stuff. So, but 8s, especially more healthy 8s, just a joy to be around and appreciate them so much more.
We love our healthy 8s.
Yes. Very rare, actually, I think.
I think we've met maybe 1 or 2.
1 or 2 so far, yeah. So,
but they are incredible people.
They are. So I'm going to take 9, and they're the peacemaker. I'm joking. I'm not taking 9. 9's your number. I was waiting for your response, but you were being so nice.
I was just being a 9.
You were like, okay, I'll let you do it.
It doesn't matter that much. So the key motivation, if it would, I would go into my 8 wing right there.
You would have slid over there real quick.
I would have been like, hey. But the motivation for this type is you want to create harmony in their environment, to avoid conflicts and tension, to preserve things as they are, to resist whatever would upset or disturb them. And I think the big thing for 9s is creating harmony in their environment. Like, it's not necessarily just an inner peace or an inner zen kind of thing. Like, if the environment is out of whack, then all of a sudden everything else is out of whack. So if I'm in a car situation with 2 tense people, all of a sudden I'm going to definitely get an attitude and slide right over into my 8 wing, but that's besides the point. So I'm either going to want to try to make everybody get along or just join the ranks because I'm merging at the same time. So it definitely depends. I think 9s really feed off the argument of, not the argument, but the environment. But I think the other thing is, since they are at the top of the circle, just being able to see into all of the other numbers, that's such a huge gift to the 9s in avoiding conflict and tension, in preserving things as they are, because they see each number and they see each person's point of view. So
yes,
that's a huge core motivation.
I was coaching a 9 yesterday. Took the test. She came out a 9 on the test, and just as we were going through it, more and more confirmation on the 9. And she's actually, as I was working through it with her, she's actually a very healthy 9. We were just going through the different traits of a 9 and the challenges that they face, and her realization that, and me knowing her for a long time, she's actually a very, very healthy 9. And but when these key motivations came up, she identified with every single one of them. And it was one of those, she could see key motivations and other numbers that maybe were attributes or traits that she did in certain situations, but this got down to her heart and core of everything that she is in life. And so, again, this is the key motivations here. This is what they're for, is to really get down to that heart and core of who you are as a human being. And I encourage you guys, did a brief overview. One time we'll do like a deep dive into each number. And
I think we could spend a whole podcast talking about each number.
Oh, for sure. But this is just the overview of them, and encourage you guys in this. Go study them more. What I was also telling her yesterday in meeting with her was, the self-discovery of the Enneagram is the funnest part of the whole thing, because
so
you
special.
Get finally identified as the type of number.
Right.
But then you go into this self-discovery mode of what her biggest thing was like, okay, because she's also very competitive and she's driven and all this stuff. So her question was like, how do I know like what level of health I'm at? You know, like, and so we went on a great website besides ours at EnneagramEnthusiast.com is the Enneagram Institute. Great website there.
That's like the original thing.
Yeah, going on there and you learn about the different types. They go into 9 different healthy ranges from unhealthy to average to,
Right.
to healthy. And so I said, here's a barometer right here. You can go look on there. So if you guys are wondering like that as well, but that's a side note there. But just wrapping this thing up here, the key motivations, they are a huge driving force, obviously.
Absolutely.
And they require more investigating, I guess you can say, once you understand more about them. And they open so many doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many doors.
And tapping into yours, but also those around you when you figure out exactly what, and obviously they're the only ones who can say what they're motivated by. But I think knowing the people around you and interacting with them and knowing what their core motivations are, that allows you to speak their language as well.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for listening again. We'll be back at it soon with another podcast coming up. Again, you can visit us at EnneagramEnthusiast.com. You can email us at EnneagramEnthusiast@gmail.com. Across the board on social media at Enneagram Enthusiast. Love you guys to jump on board into our community and join us on the journey together.
Yeah. And tell us if you have any podcast ideas for us coming up.
Sounds great.
All right. We look
Catch you next
forward to
time.
hearing you next time. Bye for now.